No limits, breaking barriers with bold belief. People underestimate what's possible, not because the world sets limits, but because most minds do. What we call impossible is often just a lack of will, not a lack of physics. The history of progress is a story of people being wrong. Wrong about how fast we can go, wrong about how far we can reach, wrong about who's capable of doing what. Every major leap in human development came from someone questioning the default assumption. Every barrier broken began with a simple refusal. I refuse to accept the limits you've handed me. Let's be clear. There are no gatekeepers to bold belief. You don't need permission to think bigger. You don't need to wait for anyone to validate your ambition. If you see a way forward that no one else sees, and you're willing to build it brick by brick, line by line, hour by hour, then that's your license to proceed. If something matters, if it could change the course of humanity, or even just your own trajectory, then not trying is irresponsible. Belief, real belief, is practical. It's not about slogans, vision boards, or empty motivation. It's the fuel you use to grind, the internal compulsion that makes you show up when you're exhausted, build when the odds are against you, push forward when everyone else is coasting. That kind of belief, deep, rational, deliberate belief, is more valuable than genius because belief scales, belief compounds, belief executes. Most people are waiting for capital, waiting for confidence, waiting for the right time. But here's the reality. No moment is coming to rescue you. There's no perfect set of conditions. The only thing that matters is what you do with the constraints you've got. Do constraints make the game harder? Yes, but constraint also drives creativity. Friction creates innovation, and pressure, when embraced, forges clarity. The goal is not comfort. The goal is not applause. The goal is to build what the world needs but hasn't yet imagined. The goal is to punch through the wall where everyone else stops and asks, what's on the other side? We're not here to repeat what's been done. We're not here to follow the script. We're here to rewrite it. The tools are in your hands now. Open source knowledge, global reach, AI, automation, energy systems, networks. If you're breathing in 2025 and still saying, I can't, you're not paying attention. We're standing on more leverage than any generation in history. So why act small? Fear, fine, feel it, but build anyway. Doubt, use it, but code anyway. Criticism, accept it, but launch anyway. That's the model. Iterate, test, break things, learn, repeat, whether it's software or rockets or your own mindset. Debug it, optimize it, and get it airborne when you hit a wall. And you will. The question isn't, is this possible? The real question is this worth it? And if it is, then keep going. Adjust the trajectory. Change the design, reinvent the path, but don't stop. Every bold idea looks ridiculous until it works. Every visionary looks insane until the launch succeeds. The world calls you crazy, and then it calls you a pioneer. So skip the approval phase, start building. There's no map for uncharted territory. You make the map by walking into the unknown. You draw the line by crossing it. You make the future not by predicting it, but by engineering it. No limits. Limits are often inherited, not discovered. They're passed down from generations that were too afraid to question them, too comfortable to push beyond them, or too distracted to even notice they existed. Most people don't live inside their true capabilities. They live inside the assumptions they've accepted without scrutiny. You walk into a room, you see the way things are, and you assume that's the way things must be. You see boundaries and walls and rules and systems, and you think, this is the game. But what if it's not? What if it's just someone else's leftover mental framework? The first step in building something extraordinary is rejecting the ordinary definitions of possible. This isn't just about optimism. It's about being deeply rational. The laws of physics are real. The laws of bureaucracy, tradition, and fear are not. They're constructs, social contracts, scripts people follow without reading. When you refuse to accept default limits, you're not being reckless. You're being accurate. You're acknowledging that most of the boundaries society teaches you to respect are not grounded in anything universal. They're built on habit, power, or laziness. Every industry has sacred assumptions. Tech said software can't drive cars. Aerospace said you can't land rockets. Energy said solar can't scale. All of those were wrong, not because reality changed, but because someone was bold enough to not bow to the consensus. If you want to build something that lasts, that matters, that shifts the trajectory of your life or your field or even your planet, you need to develop the skill of systematic doubt. You need to break apart the assumptions you're handed and rebuild them from first principles. What are the raw truths? What can physics actually support? What is theoretically achievable given enough time, energy, and iteration? Start from there, and the limits begin to vanish. But this refusal isn't just intellectual. It's personal. Most people have internalized ceilings. Ideas like I'm not the type of person who, or that's beyond my reach, or I don't have the background. These are stories, not facts. They are self-imposed restrictions disguised as humility or realism. The truth is, most of your potential hasn't even been accessed yet because it's buried under a pile of limiting narratives, and those narratives aren't neutral. They actively rob you of agency. When you believe you can't, you don't. When you believe you're unqualified, you don't try. When you assume something is impossible, you never run the test. You never write the code. You never make the call. The solution is aggressive introspection followed by relentless action. You have to treat your own mindset like a prototype. Test it, break it, improve it. Ask yourself, why do I think this isn't possible? And then go chase the real data. Most people stop at resistance, at friction, at the first sign of difficulty because they think that difficulty confirms the limit. It doesn't. It only confirms that you've reached the edge of the known. Beyond that is where the builders live, the explorers, the ones who don't just accept constraints. They exploit them. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room to do this. You just need to be the most curious, the most stubborn, the most unwilling to back down from a question like why not. You need to ask it louder and more often than anyone else. Why not me? Why not now? Why not this idea? Why should I accept that this problem can't be solved? Who said that? What were their incentives? What data were they working with? Have conditions changed? Has technology changed? Has demand changed? And most importantly, do I care enough to find out? People will try to talk you back into the box. They'll say it's too risky, too unrealistic, too much. That's because your pursuit makes them uncomfortable. Your refusal to settle confronts their decision to do exactly that. But the barrier you're pushing against isn't just structural. It's cultural. It's psychological, and the moment you start breaking it, you show others it was never real to begin with. That's how you lead, not with slogans, but with momentum, not with hype, but with results, not by waiting for the world to believe in you, but by building something that forces it to. Every time you see a rule, ask yourself who benefits from it. Every time you're told something can't be done, consider whether the person saying it has ever tried. Most of the time they haven't. They're parroting someone else's limitations. They're recycling doubt. And if you're not careful, you'll start building your life with their bricks. But the blueprint you need is forged by your own experiments. By refusing to accept the inherited constraints and running your own simulations, mental, physical, entrepreneurial, you start finding out what's actually possible for you, not just what's been average for everyone else. This mindset doesn't just apply to companies or moonshots. It applies to how you train, how you learn, how you solve problems at every scale. You can optimize a system, or you can question whether the system should exist in the first place. You can follow best practices, or you can redefine them. When someone tells you that's just how it's done, treat it like a red flag. That's a signpost saying, nobody's questioned this in a while. Be the one who does. And don't ask for permission. Ask better questions, build better models, and then take them into the real world. It's not about being radical for the sake of being radical. It's about being accurate. Rational, objective. If the world as it is does not align with what's possible, then the world must change. That's not arrogance, it's responsibility. If you can see a better way and you're willing to build it, you must. Not because it's easy, not because you're sure, but because you refuse to live a life dictated by outdated assumptions and comfortable myths. There is no honor in accepting limitations that no longer serve anyone. There is no wisdom in obeying boundaries that were drawn by fear or convenience. There is no progress in imitation when you were born to invent. The limits are a lie, and the sooner you refuse them, the sooner you begin the real work of tearing them down and replacing them with something true. Bold belief is often misunderstood. It's not about hype or blind optimism or shouting louder than everyone else. It's not about standing in front of a mirror repeating affirmations. That's not belief, that's noise. Real belief, belief that breaks barriers and moves systems and creates revolutions, is functional. It's engineered, it operates like a tool, it serves a purpose, executes a process, and delivers a result. It's measurable by what it produces, not how it feels. If belief doesn't lead to action, it's not belief, it's decoration. It's a screensaver for your brain, and you can't build anything meaningful with decoration. If you want to create something others think is impossible, you can't wait for belief to feel comfortable. You have to install it like software. You have to choose it deliberately, even when it doesn't come naturally, especially when it doesn't. Because the moments when belief matters most are the moments when every signal is telling you to stop. The world doesn't hand you reasons to keep going, it hands you reasons to quit. Belief is what lets you look at the metrics, the failures, the delays, and still say, I'm not done. That's not delusion. That's design. The type of belief that actually creates results is rooted in logic. It understands that most things are hard until they're not. That progress doesn't move in a straight line. It moves in iterations. It moves through friction, and that friction is a feature, not a flaw. The world doesn't owe you certainty. It doesn't owe you immediate validation. But if you build long enough and test hard enough, it will show you what works. Belief is the fuel that carries you through those test cycles. It's not meant to be static. It's adaptive. It evolves with the process, and it gets sharper, more calibrated, every time you decide to act in spite of doubt. Most people use belief backwards. They wait to feel it before they move. They wait for the stars to align, the funding to arrive, the feedback to turn positive. But belief isn't something that shows up first. It's something that follows motion. The more you build, the more you validate your own capacity. The more you solve, the more you realize that no problem is sacred. Everything can be hacked, engineered, redesigned. And when you see that, belief becomes a side effect of momentum. But to get there, you have to treat belief like a system, not a mood. Systemic belief means deciding what matters, defining what's possible, and orienting your behavior around that every single day. It means not asking whether you feel like working, but asking whether the work aligns with your long-term aim. It means waking up and executing your roadmap regardless of yesterday's results. It means looking at your environment, identifying what isn't serving the mission, and deleting it. It means treating belief like gravity, constant, present, inescapable. Not something you access occasionally when you're inspired, but something embedded into your daily operating model when you look at people who've built world-changing things. It's not that they had more belief, it's that they used it better. They didn't waste it on theatrics. They didn't spend it trying to convince other people to approve. They used it like leverage. Every decision, every hire, every line of code or prototype or pitch was shaped by a deep conviction that what they were doing mattered, that it was necessary, that the world needed it even if the world didn't know it yet, and that conviction wasn't passive, it was active. It was demonstrated through action, through persistence, through thousands of small, compounding decisions that said, "This is where we're going, whether you see it or not, to operate this way." You have to stop outsourcing your certainty. You can't let external feedback be the source of your confidence. Markets shift, people criticize, plans fail. If your belief system is tethered to anything temporary, it will collapse. That's why belief has to be anchored in your values, your logic, your reasons for doing the thing in the first place. You need internal clarity, not external applause. You need to know what you're solving for, who you're building for, and why it matters more than your comfort. Then you build, test, refine, and repeat. And every cycle strengthens the core. Bold belief also requires high tolerance for solitude. When you're building something that doesn't exist yet, you're going to spend a lot of time without support. Without confirmation, you'll explain your idea and people won't get it. You'll show your early results and people will laugh or ignore them. You'll propose a solution, and people will tell you the problem is fine the way it is. If you're waiting for consensus before you start, you'll never start. And if you quit when consensus doesn't show up, you were never building. You were negotiating, but builders don't negotiate with public opinion. They ship anyway. There's also a kind of responsibility that comes with bold belief, because once you see what's possible, once you understand that the barrier isn't physics, it's will, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to apathy. You can't pretend it doesn't matter. If you have the resources, the insight, the tools, the talent, and you still don't build, that's not humility, that's negligence. Belief isn't just about self-expression. It's about solving. It's about engineering the world forward. And once you've chosen to believe in something bigger than yourself, you've committed to doing everything you can to make it real, even when it costs you comfort, convenience, and certainty. It's easy to fake belief, to post about it, to talk about ambition in theoretical terms, but belief isn't something you announce. It's something you demonstrate. You show it in how you use your time, in what you prioritize, in how you handle setbacks, in whether you quit or adapt. You show it by running experiments when others are writing off possibilities. You show it by choosing depth over noise, results over image. And most importantly, you show it by refusing to stop until the thing you imagined becomes something other people can use. That's why belief has to be built into your system, into your habits, into your mental models. Because when things get hard, and they will, you won't have time to search for inspiration. You'll need to move, to solve, to ship, and the only thing that makes that possible is belief that's already installed, already tested, already proven. You build that by doing hard things consistently, not by waiting for motivation to rescue you. You earn belief by doing the work that other people avoid, and then doing it again. The world doesn't need more believers in theory. It needs believers in practice, people who are willing to commit their energy, their time, their resources, their attention to solving problems that matter, people who are more focused on shipping the solution than selling the idea. People who don't flinch at failure because they know belief wasn't supposed to protect them from failure. It was supposed to carry them through it. That's how you break barriers, not with wishful thinking, but with operational belief. The kind that drives code and capital and construction and change. the kind that gets stronger every time it's tested and still chooses to move forward anyway. Constraints are not the enemy. They are the conditions in which real innovation happens. Unlimited time, unlimited money, unlimited options. They don't breed creativity, they breed complacency. When everything is possible, nothing is urgent. But when you're backed into a corner, when resources are tight, when failure carries real consequences, that's when your brain starts working differently. It stops trying to optimize comfort and starts optimizing solutions. Constraints force prioritization. They demand clarity. They strip away the luxury of indecision and force you to get real, fast. Most people use constraints as an excuse to stop. They look at their lack of funding, their lack of experience, their lack of support and say, "This is why I can't." But high performers look at those same variables and say, "This is why I must." The constraint becomes the catalyst, the wall becomes the reason to build the ladder. The absence of a resource becomes the trigger for innovation. Because when you can't rely on excess, you're forced to rely on design. You're forced to build smarter, not just bigger. You're forced to engineer solutions that don't depend on abundance but on efficiency, precision, and deep understanding. Innovation thrives under pressure. Not fake pressure, the kind people create to feel productive, but real existential pressure, the kind that comes from knowing your next iteration matters, that if it doesn't work, the runway shortens, that if it doesn't launch, the opportunity might vanish. This kind of pressure creates urgency, and urgency creates momentum. It forces fast feedback loops. It makes you strip out unnecessary complexity and focus only on what moves the needle. In that environment, innovation is not optional, it's required. And the people who embrace that kind of pressure are the ones who consistently outpace those with every advantage. Look at any breakthrough product, any disruptive company, any major shift in industry. Almost always it started in constraint. It started in a garage, a dorm room, a small team with big problems and limited tools. The constraints didn't block the vision, they sharpened it. They narrowed the scope in a way that demanded excellence. When you can't afford to build 10 things, you're forced to make one thing incredible. When you can't hire 50 people, you're forced to find leverage. When you can't waste a day, you're forced to make every hour count. That discipline becomes a permanent advantage. What people call scrappiness is actually a kind of refined engineering mindset. It's a way of thinking that says, we're going to do this with what we have, not what we wish we had. That mindset becomes a superpower. It trains resilience. It trains pattern recognition. It trains the ability to execute under real-world conditions, not theoretical perfection. And that's exactly what most systems, teams, and individuals need. Less fantasy, more function. Less dreaming, more designing. The difference between a nice idea and a working product is execution under constraint. The world is filled with people who had good ideas and all the resources in the world, and still failed. Not because they weren't smart, but because their environment didn't require them to be sharp. Constraints sharpen the mind. They remove the option to drift. When you don't have the safety net, every move matters. And that precision, over time, creates a level of operational excellence that no amount of capital can substitute for. You start seeing systems. You start noticing inefficiencies. You start designing processes that are not just functional, but antifragile, able to withstand pressure and improve from it. There's also a psychological advantage to working with constraints. It builds what most people lack: mental toughness. It trains your ability to stay calm under fire, to solve instead of panic, to move forward instead of freeze. Every constraint you navigate becomes a skill stored in your operating system. Every workaround becomes a data point. Every limitation becomes a challenge to be reverse engineered, and over time that process rewires the way you see problems. You stop reacting emotionally and start responding strategically. You stop saying, "I can't," and start asking, "How can I?" It's easy to believe that if you just had more time, more support, more connections, you'd finally succeed. But that belief keeps you stuck, because more is not the answer. Better is, and better comes from constraints. Better comes from building under pressure. Better comes from having no choice but to figure it out. If you only operate at your best when conditions are perfect, you will always lose to the person who has learned to operate under chaos. Adaptability beats abundance every time, and the only way you build adaptability is through repetition in constraint. Constraints also serve as filters. They force you to get clear on what actually matters. When you don't have the budget to chase every idea, you're forced to decide what's essential. When you can't afford to over-engineer, you're forced to build what users actually need. When you don't have unlimited bandwidth, you're forced to say no to everything except what truly aligns with your goal. That kind of constraint doesn't just shape output, it shapes identity. It turns you from someone who reacts to opportunities into someone who architects outcomes. From someone who waits for permission into someone who creates without asking, and perhaps most importantly, constraints democratize the field. They put underdogs in play. They level the psychological terrain. When no one has enough, the ones who know how to move lean win. In that space, hustle becomes a multiplier, clarity becomes a weapon, and belief becomes the currency. The most powerful ideas don't emerge when everything is handed to you. They emerge when you're forced to build from nothing but conviction and a sketchpad. That's where real builders thrive, in the mess, in the scramble, in the noise, in the moments where others say it's impossible and they say, "Watch me." If you wait for perfect conditions, you'll never ship. If you expect to feel ready, you'll never start. If you need every variable controlled, you'll never build anything that can survive the real world. Constraints aren't the reason you can't. They're the reason you must. They aren't signs to stop. They're signals to invent. They aren't the enemy of bold vision. They're the training ground for it. Every limitation is a design challenge. Every problem is an engineering puzzle. Every gap is a chance to build something no one else thought of, because no one else was forced to the mind. Set shift is simple but powerful. Instead of saying, "We don't have enough," you ask, "What can we do with exactly this?" That single question changes the entire trajectory of your thinking. It removes excuses, it activates agency, it reminds you that most of what you need is already in front of you. It just hasn't been arranged yet into the right shape. The solution isn't elsewhere, it's embedded inside the constraint. And the faster you embrace that, the faster you start solving problems at a level most people don't even reach, so you stop waiting for abundance. You stop resenting limitation. You look at the tight deadline, the small budget, the missing team, and you smile. Because this is where the work gets good. This is where you figure out what you're really made of. This is where creativity meets necessity. This is where innovation isn't a luxury. It's your only option. And when that's true, you move faster, think sharper, build leaner, and rise higher than the ones who had every advantage but no urgency to use it. Walking into the unknown is not a metaphor. It's a requirement. If you're building something new, leading something forward, creating something that hasn't been done before, you have no map. There's no blueprint, no checklist, no guarantee. You're not following someone else's path, you're creating one. And that means uncertainty isn't a problem to solve, it's a condition to master. It's the terrain. The unknown isn't a warning sign, it's a green light. It's where the real builders go, because that's where the opportunity lies, untouched, unexplored, unsolved. Most people avoid the unknown because it's uncomfortable. It's where the data runs out, where the support fades, where the crowd disappears. It's where validation stops and risk begins. And yet, That space is the only place where anything groundbreaking ever gets built. Everything familiar was once unfamiliar. Everything obvious was once absurd. Every industry standard, every best practice, every common solution. It all started with someone stepping into the dark and saying, "Let's find out what's here." That's not fearlessness, that's responsibility. Because if you can see what doesn't exist yet, and you choose not to explore it, you've chosen comfort over contribution. The unknown is not chaos, it's raw potential. It's where problems haven't been solved yet, where systems haven't been optimized, where questions haven't been answered. And that's where your advantage begins. Because when you're willing to walk into it, to take action without certainty, to explore without guarantees, you unlock something most people never experience: discovery. You learn by doing what others are too hesitant to try. You gather insights by building what others only debate, and those insights compound. They become proprietary knowledge, not in theory, but in the form of tested experience that can't be copied or faked. Building in the unknown requires a different operating system. You can't rely on precedent. You can't rely on templates. You can't rely on approval. You have to build from first principles. You have to ask fundamental questions like, what are we trying to achieve? What is the simplest path to get there? What assumptions are we holding that might be wrong? What do we believe that others haven't realized yet? These are not questions you answer once. They are questions you return to daily. Because the deeper you go into the unknown, the more you realize how little you actually knew when you started. And that's not discouraging, it's liberating. It means there's more to discover, more to refine, more to create. The further you push into uncertainty, the more you develop a tolerance for it. You stop expecting clarity and start building with ambiguity. You stop needing guarantees and start trusting process. You stop craving predictability and start leveraging iteration. The unknown rewards those who adapt in real time, those who collect signal in motion, those who know that feedback only shows up after you ship, not before. In this space, perfectionism is your enemy, because waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect team, that's how people stall out. The builders who last are the ones who ship early, fail fast, learn aggressively, and keep moving. Every time you step into the unknown, you expand your edge. You prove to yourself that discomfort isn't fatal. That fear isn't a stop sign. That uncertainty isn't a reason to wait. It's a reason to act, because the only way to reduce the unknown is to explore it. You can't strategize your way around it. You can't analyze it into safety. You can only walk into it and build as you go. That's what separates talkers from doers, spectators from shapers. It's not about having all the answers. It's about being willing to find them through real work. This path isn't glamorous. It's often isolating. You'll make moves that don't make sense to others. You'll pursue ideas no one else believes in yet. You'll be told you're wrong, unrealistic, irrational. But if your actions are rooted in logic, data, and relentless iteration, you'll be proven right over time. Not because you said so, but because your product works, your solution scales, your system survives. The world doesn't reward ideas, it rewards execution, and execution in the unknown is a skill few are willing to develop. The greatest breakthroughs are built by people who didn't wait for permission, who didn't need consensus, who didn't require certainty. They started when conditions were unclear. They moved when the outcome wasn't guaranteed. They acted because the mission mattered more than their image, more than their comfort, more than their fear of being wrong. And that mindset, bias toward action under uncertainty, is the foundation of all meaningful progress. It's how you cross thresholds. It's how you leave the echo chamber of the known and enter the domain of original work. You can't outsource this mindset. You can't fake it. You have to train it by doing things that stretch you, by solving problems no one handed you, by building systems without instructions, by facing the blank page, the empty terminal, the first prototype, and deciding to start anyway. Each time you do that, you gain something others don't have, not just knowledge, but conviction, not just insight, but muscle memory, the ability to operate with clarity in environments where most people freeze. That's how you become dangerous, not reckless, but unshakable, not delusional, but deeply capable of navigating what others avoid. The unknown doesn't get smaller the longer you wait. It just grows more intimidating. The only way through it is through motion, through tests, through real results. You learn more from a bad launch than a year of planning. You gain more from one tough iteration than from reading every case study. The unknown reveals itself to those who engage with it, who build inside of it, who map it not with guesses but with real-world inputs. And once you start mapping it, you become the reference point for others. You become the one who's not speculating about the future. You're building it. This is not about risk for the sake of risk. It's about accuracy. It's about truth. Because the truth is, most people are living inside outdated models, following broken playbooks, solving yesterday's problems, and they don't even realize it because they haven't gone far enough into the unknown to see the difference. Once you have, there's no going back. You can't unsee inefficiencies. You can't unlearn better systems. You can't pretend that comfort is an acceptable trade, off for stagnation. The future is always being built by those who are willing to step into places others avoid, who are willing to think, test, and lead without consensus. Walking into the unknown doesn't mean you ignore data. It means you create it, you generate it by acting, you collect it by building, you calibrate your next move based on what you discover, not what you assume. That is the process of innovation. It's not chaotic, it's iterative. It's not mystical, it's mechanical, and anyone can train for it if they're willing to stop needing perfect visibility before they move. If they're willing to be the one who says, "We don't know what's ahead, but we'll find out by going there ourselves." That's how leaders are forged. That's how breakthroughs are born. That's how you stop repeating the known and start architecting the next frontier.